Hi everyone, and welcome back to another scale model shed video. And this time round I'm going to be building this. As you can see, it's the new Rye Field Models 135 M4A3 Sherman with full interior. So this is a big kit, and as such I think I'm going to break the build down into two videos. The first video being the build of the kit and the painting of the interior. Second video being the painting and weathering of the outside of the tank itself. So if we're ready, let's do this. So the last tank with interior that I built was a Tacom Panther, and the quality of this model looks up there with that. Some of the parts have some minor flashing, some have some minor seam lines like these wheels to sort out, but nothing serious. And as with every tank, I will not be looking forward to building these workable tracks. The kit starts with the assembly of the inside and the outside of the upper hull. Here you can see an example of some of the minor flashing I mentioned earlier. And this part had snapped on the sprue and needed to be glued back together once in position. I'm going to be using the upgrade kit from RFM, which adds a lot of extra detail to the outside of the tank. I'm not going to be fitting the full fenders to the model, as I believe these didn't last long once the tank was in operation. I've discovered recently that these little knife sharpening blocks are excellent for cleaning up photo etch. After the assembly of the upper hull was complete, I started on the lower hull. Locating the 5 parts of the lower hull is a little bit tricky, and it occurred to me afterwards that it would be a good idea to use the firewall that sits between the crew compartment and the engine bay as a jig to ensure all these parts are glued square. This is the firewall I suggest using as an assembly jig for the lower hull. At this point it tells you to assemble the engine onto that firewall and then fit it into the lower hull. But I'm not going to do that yet, as I'm going to leave all parts separate for painting and detailing. So now I've fully assembled the lower hull, the engine firewall, the engine, the front transmission and the front transmission cover. The whole lot is primed in Tamiya grey fine primer, painted in XF2 and given a coat of satin varnish before weathering. I primed the engine grey. I really should have primed it black, but anyway, it was then given a coat of XF62 followed by a dry brushing with some aluminium, then some heavier chipping with a sponge. Once the engine bay was sufficiently grimy and the cooling fans were fitted, the engine and the firewall were then glued in position in the lower hull. All the way through this build I've been experimenting with different techniques on how to make a white tank interior look interesting. Modelling interiors washed like this is quite a good way of adding some tonal variation to a white wall. All the remaining storage boxes, ammo cases, floors, etc. were all then painted in XF2 white and given a coat of satin varnish. The following sequence shows you how I weathered the floor of the tank, and it's a pretty good representation of the techniques I used to weather the whole interior. I then moved on to the last section of the interior build, which was the turret assembly. Finally, with the turret assembled, it was time to paint all the last parts of the interior in XF2 white. This cotton bud has been moistened with enamel thinners. Here I'm assembling the photo etch ammunition case for the 50 caliber machine gun that mounts on the turret. Now onto assembling the tank's running gear, which features articulating road wheels and workable tracks. The tracks consist of 4 sprues, each containing 3 different types of track pad. So my first job was to remove all parts off the sprues and put into separate numbered containers. You need to build 22 sets of this assembly, but the kit does provide you with 4 assembly jigs. So it's a good idea to use all 4 at once to speed up production. In order for the tracks to be workable, you cannot get any glue on the pivot pin. You need to just put a tiniest dot of glue in the recess of the pad. Once assembled, fitting the top cover ensures that all the guide horns are in a perfect straight line. Once assembled, connect together 11 assemblies per side. I use the jig to do this to prevent any mistakes with the direction of the tread pattern. Then finally, the last few pieces are fitted up. The moulding line down the barrel is carefully cleaned. The muzzle brake is assembled and glued into position. And the barrel is fitted up into the gun mantle. So that concludes part 1 of the build. So the next episode is obviously going to be painting and weathering the tank, and I've also got a little bit more work I'd like to do on the inside. I think some more comprehensive mud and grime is needed. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll get the next one up as soon as I can. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It would be great if you subscribed, and thank you for watching.